Welcome to Conversations with John Harper, More Than Meets the Eye, which is the last for now in a series of chats we've been enjoying to do with all things development. My name is Rez Huseyin. I'm a student of the Diamond Approach, a spiritual path that I discovered through my work with the Enneagram, and I'm with John Harper, Diamond Approach teacher, Enneagram guide, and author of 3 books currently, more in the pipeline. Most recently, Nurturing Essence, a compass for essential parenting. So I would like to talk about superego revealing structures in the Enneagram. In other words, using the Enneagram to help us to identify superego attacks, which in the beginning is quite a lot of, it's not easy. I haven't found it easy. Yeah. So one of us needs to say what a superego is. John, would you like to do the honors? Or
Well, Rez, I always enjoy an opportunity to correct someone. Why don't you start?
yeah, no, I like being corrected, so this works well. Superego, internalized attacking structure which controls through shame, judgment, comparisons, and shoulds, and produces emotional states that block realization and really turn us away from inquiring, close down inquiry, which is the central practice of the Diamond Approach. So in the Diamond Approach, the method for working with the superego is not necessarily to kill it. I don't know if that's even possible, but to recognize it, disidentify from it, and stay present with the experience it's trying to shut down. So that's all I have, John. What would you add to?
When we talk about the superego, or we talk about Freud's model of the id, the ego, and the superego, that these are just constructs, just models, that none of them have any ontological ground. They're not real. They're things that are happening in our mind. Now, it's very useful to separate them out and talk about them as if they're separate components, and to talk about them in a way that, okay, they do have existence because we actually feel that they have existence, that they're separate parts of us or whatever. So that's useful. But that's not where my head is these days. And I will try to frame things a lot in the perspective that a person that is new to working with it might relate to. Not, I won't do that totally because I don't know if I can, but the superego is that part of us that most fundamentally it is there to keep us in a box. It is the number one impediment to any kind of spiritual growth or transformation, because it has this message that its job is to keep us in that known world, that box, for our survival. That's its job, to help us survive. And it takes it really damn seriously, to the point that it's willing to almost kill us to help us survive. And 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 really it is killing us. It is robbing us of our vitality and life force, and using our own vitality of the soul and being to keep us in that box. So it develops into this coercive, tyrannical, internal judge or critic, or what do you call those? Executioner, judge, jury, and executioner. Like, no, you need to do this. and it operates off of two main currents: fear and hatred. So it's trying to scare the hell out of us, or it is using distorted power as hatred, as a coercive force to keep us in check. So I don't think that helps clarify things at all. But
What you just said?
yeah,
Oh
does it?
yeah. Yeah, it does, John. And there are two things, you know, the gravity of that, even when you really sit with that, like would any of us be willing to be controlled by, let's say, another human being in the way that this structure does? No, it really brings up a lot of, actually quite a lot of heat right now. I do get angry about the ways that, in my 42 years that this has limited me. It's such a it's such a thing to take seriously, I think. And there's a connection here with the self-preservation drive, isn't there? Because, well, the superego is protecting the survival of identity, not any genuine survival needs.
Well, the superego, its basis starts out as love. So it starts out, imagine you're a mother or a father, you got little Timothy or Julia, and it's, like, don't do this, honey, don't touch that hot stove, don't run into the street. Okay. Uh, it starts out as parental attention that is oriented toward keeping the child safe and helping it survive.
So I think the Enneagram can help us with inner critic work. It doesn't, the Enneagram's a map, so it doesn't help with the process of separating from the inner critic. That has to come
Oh,
from,
but it does. It
oh,
does.
well, there we go.
This is this is what this third book in the series deals with.
Mm,
You have to return to the roots of the Enneagram as a dynamic map of process. The Enneagram personality types will reveal certain things about your superego and its messaging. And if you understand the messaging, you can start like the preliminary work of working with the superego, because the superego work from how we approach it in the Diamond Approach. The first thing that's necessary is to recognize it,
mm,
recognize that, oh, I'm having a superego attack, or I'm hearing this should, or I'm feeling this contraction, and I go, what's that about? And I locate the message behind the contraction, which is usually a should or a don't or something like that. And once I locate that, I'm looking for the sense of judgment in it. If you do that, or if you don't do that, you're worthless, or you'll never amount to anything, or whatever the message is. So when we start doing that, when we develop the capacity to catch a message in the immediacy of a moment, and then we can identify the contraction, can identify the message to the point where we can actually verbalize it, put it into words. Here's what it's saying to me. You shouldn't do this because everybody will think you're stupid, right?
mm.
So once I do that, once I develop that capacity, and this is all about stretching out the gap, stretching out the moment that right now I hear that message and I react and I fall into a habitual pattern.
Mm.
This is stretching the moment so that I don't immediately react. I don't immediately fall into my habit pattern. I'm creating space to bring more awareness and presence into what's actually happening. this thing's jumping on my case or whatever. And one of the things about the superego is you can never win. You can never explain things enough to where it's going to get off your case. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
Mhm.
So the second step uh, is I hear this message, and now I want to reflect on how far back can I hear this message, feel into this message. Oh, and our parents, all of us have certain messages from our childhood that were just so front and center. They're, you know, big boys don't cry, you know, buck up, whatever it is, right? So when we're hearing these messages, I want to identify, I want to go back right to the origin, mom or dad. Whose voice is this? I
Mhm.
want to get clear that the voice in my head is not me. I think it's me because everything that's going on in my head is using my voice, so to speak. The thinking, the voice of my thinking process is my voice, so to speak.
Mm.
So I'm taking my superego to be me. And one of the first steps in creating that space and that gap is to see that's not my voice. as a as a psychic structure, the superego is an introject. It's taking something from outside of ourselves and making it ours. Because if you look at it, really, if you really get into it, right, you can hear two voices. You can hear the superego, the voice of judgment or whatever, and you can hear the little kid's voice. No, I don't. You know, it can get very young. Okay. Now they both sound like you.
Mhm.
But if you get that dynamic, you can see, no, that's the kid interacting with the parent. As an adult, you can turn around and say, take a hike. I don't need you anymore, right?
Mhm.
I don't need that kind of, that's total bullshit. You're making me feel like shit. Right? That's not productive. That's not helping me. That message isn't any good. And and part of the power of the superego is that there's a grain of truth in its messaging. I mean, but it's just a tiny thing. Like, oh, be careful. If you do that, you might da 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 da. And if you da 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 da, then you're going to be lower than whale shit. Right? So it takes this tiny piece of truth and it just blows it totally out of proportion. It turns it into this catastrophic future possibility. Right?
Mhm.
The superego is never in the now.
Mhm.
You know, how many times do we do things like you burn your hand, you grab a hot pot or something, right? And
Mm.
not paying attention or whatever. And and that thing jumps in there and immediately says, fuck, how stupid you are. And it goes on and on and on with the judgment. And you get caught in this loop of self-recrimination and blame and this anti-life force. Da 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 da. Right? And the normal reaction is we want to explain ourselves to it. We want to ourselves, you know.
Mm.
We're trying to cut ourselves a break and get beyond this terrible experience. I mean, the experience of being judged is horrific, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever had an experience of being judged that way that wasn't horrific?
No, no.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
terrible.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it's so terrible and so powerful that we want to do anything we can to get out of that line of vision, to not be seen that way.
Yeah.
But we get caught in this mental groove of process and cascading thoughts that now we're trapped in trying to justify and explain things and da 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 da. And why are we doing that? We're doing that, we think, uh, and that is very, very early intelligence trying to work, where a child is trying to come up with a way to get out of this situation. That's why
Mm.
children lie all the time.
Yeah.
You know, that, you know that that is a sophisticated strategy to get out of this situation. Wasn't me.
Mm.
I didn't do that. So and so did. You know, weren't you that kid right there that who I caught with their hand in the cookie? No, that wasn't me. The devil made me do it. Whatever, right? So what's needed is not some kind of it, we don't need something to do to correct the situation. We need beingness. We need presence. We need awareness. So that means settling in to this unpleasant experience and being able to tolerate it so we can bring awareness and presence to it. Again, this is the painful truth that when it hits, we go, it's such a heartbreak. We've spent so much of our life in pain and suffering trying to correct situations when with this type of work, what's needed is no doing. It awareness and presence does all the work. You just
Mm.
have to be there, allow the awareness and presence to arise and actually engage what's happening in the moment. You don't
Mhm.
do anything. It's going to start seeing what's actually there, penetrating it, opening up, uh, dissolving all of the history and all this crap that's going on, and allow you to see into reality.
Mhm. Mhm. That's great, John. So you've outlined how to work with the inner critic, how to defend against it, how further along in the work when we can simply just be aware of the structure and we're not identified with it, then it can become a sort of support for inquiry, right, John? It can be that we're like, oh, what is it trying to do for us?
You're hitting on something that is so subtle that most of us miss it. And again, it goes back to understanding the Enneagram in its original form as how being comes into this world, manifests as individuality, uh, is able to know itself, and then return to itself as pure beingness. And in that dynamic, there are two shock points. And the first shock point is between 3 and 4. Yeah. This is where uh, awareness turns in on itself into this world, turns into self-reflection and image and all of that, right? If at that shock point, uh, new energy from being or presence or awareness, whatever, if it doesn't enter at that point, then the process moves in to the realm of performance and constructed self and self image and all of that. And the superego is the mechanism that keeps being from entering that point and correcting things. And this is happening every 4 seconds. Is actually happening faster than that. But everything you're experiencing is following that diagram of the Enneagram as process.
Mm.
Every thought, every breath, everything. My own thing. If you take that out and look at it in a larger view and larger, if you move to a mile out or 30,000 miles or whatever, then you start to see how that fractal, that moment, that little piece of experience is actually within a bigger piece of experience within a bigger one. And you'll see that the whole patterning of the personality is constructed of these moments of what's happening at this shock point where the habit is staving off the intrusion of being into my experience.
Mm.
And that's being, and the superego is the gatekeeper.
So this is just for people. This is a process Enneagram view and it's to do with a trilogy of books that will be out. Did you say December the first one, or?
The first two will probably be out in December. The third one is, probably January. Let's take you.
Let's take me.
Let's
What do
take
you
you.
mean?
You're a self-proclaimed type 4. At the shock point for 4, what happens is you're disconnected from your depth.
Mm.
So you're disconnected from the pure sensitivity of what you are, which is connected to the source, right? And then that gets connected and turned inward toward self-image.
Mm.
And then the relationship is not so much pure sensitivity, but emotionality, a particular flavor of sensitivity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that emotionality or whatever becomes a great whipping tool for the superego.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you just take and reflect, I'm not asking you to give out any secrets, you know, uh, but if you feel into the dynamic of that, about how that superego is using your sense of emotionality,
Mm.
how it's using this moment of being disconnected from being, this loss, which turns into that longing, and how many times it's beating the crap out of you with these two things.
So and all types have a version of that. So that's how the superego operates to keep the core fixation intact. That's definitely a thing. What I want to talk about is actually how the superego operates around the soul child structure, because particularly for fours, which have an inner one and a soul child in that is the flavor of type 1, and I have found it confusing at times discerning whether I'm projecting my superego or whether I'm in touch with an infantile type 1 structure, which I am a lot of the time. So I think it's very important to see that discrimination. And for the other types, I think it's a little clearer. For instance, let's take your type with the inner needy 2. It
Well,
initially,
let's take type 1,
okay.
because everyone has a superego,
Mm-hmm.
and the superego is like the embodiment of a totally toxic, distorted one. That Why is that? I mean, it makes sense if you think about it, and we need to keep in mind that again, we are all of these types, and if you
Mm.
understand the Enneagram as process, you understand, you begin to see that this whole thing of movement along these lines is a fabrication. It doesn't really exist in the way that it's being presented in the world. You don't move anywhere. I don't go to 5. I don't go to 2. That's not what's happening. It's something totally different than that if you look at it from process. But everything begins from one. Every process begins from one. And
Mm.
what is one? One is perfection. Everything comes out of perfection. Being as it enters the world is coming out of a perfect state, out of perfection. And then as it moves into manifestation, okay, it goes through this process, which eventually brings it to this shock point, which totally disconnects it from the perfection, turns it in,
Mm.
right? So everyone has this connection, 2.1 in perfection vis-a-vis this judgmental thing called the superego. And what's it trying to do? It's trying to hold people accountable to a standard of black and white, right and wrong, which is what it mistakes for perfection. So 4-1, the soul child, is the movement toward it, it's what happens. It's not a move, it's an opening to, it's more transparency in our consciousness. It's relaxing, the contraction is easing up, and I'm not going to point one. I'm relaxing and opening up, and the qualities of point one are now becoming part of what's available in my consciousness. And so they're starting to influence my immediate experience. They're bringing their treasures and their resources into my experience. I'm not going there. I'm
Mm.
I'm opening up my sensitivity, and my field of potentiality and possibilities is opening up and allowing forces that are outside of this constricted place I normally live to enter my field. And I mean,
Mm.
it makes sense to look at it like, oh yeah, this diagram. I mean, that was very useful for years and years. It was
Mm.
useful to see it like that, and it kind of makes a little sense. But the death trap of it is we get trapped into thinking around with our personality type.
Mm. Yeah, that's not. I can feel us talking at slight cross purposes. So I agree with everything you've said. The point I'm trying to make is, and it is because I'm imagining whoever would listen to this would be early in stages of distinguishing superego. So if you're new to distinguishing the superego, the Enneagram can be used to support identification of the likely content of superego attacks. And the content of my superego attack around my soul child point, as a 4, I do not like seeing my criticality, my judgment. Those things separate me from people. They're the opposite of what I'm trying to do with my core personality. So the superego functions to reject that part of me when it's coming up, and reject it when I see it in others. And I think I'm suggesting that it works this way around the Enneagram. So
Every
um
day. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. So I think what you're trying to get at here is, first of all, when we think about the soul child, or the 4 for point one, or the 8 for point two, right? This is what we refer to as our heart space,
Mm.
or sensitive place for us, right? And so any movement toward that space, any opening uh, to the vulnerability of being in that space, that more sensitive space, is immediately defended against by the superego by attacking you. Don't be like that. Don't be vulnerable. Don't be needy. Don't be a wimp,
Mm.
whatever its message is, right? And so each type has this dynamic that's happening when the superego comes in and is trying to judge it, of like point 0.8, I'm bouncing between 2 and 5, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
because I may be having an experience in the moment that is more about relationship and the heart and being more sensitive and open. And this thing's going to come in and it's going to say, danger, Will Robinson, don't do that shit, you know,
Yeah,
da da da
exactly.
da.
Yeah.
And so if I respond to it by wanting to defend myself against it, that takes me into, we would say, the 0.5 thing.
Mm.
For me, what that turns into is, instead of opening up and becoming more emotionally sensitive, 0.5 is a shutdown of all emotion within me. It's a
Mm.
dissociation from that. And why is that dissociation happening? Because this thing is bearing down on me with this lethal force that's all about this horrific judgment about being a human being with, having some sensitivity.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you get into this dynamic of triggering your normal state of contraction has become so uh, normalized, okay, that when this thing's getting on you, it pressures you into taking a more defended position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I didn't see that, but that's exactly the effect. So not only you're contending with the attack for, um, getting in touch with the heart point, and then you're perhaps driven to your other point, which definitely also is likely content for superego. So have you had your superego attack you, when you're fiving out, John, for putting your strength and power as an 8 at risk? So withdrawing, making you vulnerable. Have you had attacks around that back in the day?
Say, you're asking
Well,
about,
yeah,
I'm in the
it-
more defended lockdown contraction of what we would call 0.5 for me,
yeah,
and my superego attacking me there.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the depth of that realm, for me, is like a total schizoid withdrawal
Mm,
from, my emotions. Okay? And I'm totally in my head trying to deal with everything. And so the engagement with the superego becomes one of disconnection from my heart and my feelings and my sensitivity to all of this mental activity happening and what have you. And it shifts from, uh, like you might say, the quality of the aggression from the superego switches from the distortion of red, which would mean like anger toward me, to hatred,
mm,
because I'm in the realm now of more of the black essence or whatever, and it is turning this hatred, because what's happening with the superego, okay, part of what happens is we're looking at it ourselves through its eyes. It's a lens that we use to look at ourselves and judge ourselves. So that hatred, that it where it's taking my power and using it against me, the more that I get wrapped up with it and identified with it, the more I'm in the realm of self-hatred. Does that answer
um,
your question to some degree?
yeah, it does. So I was just wanting to check whether, well, validate my own experience of being in two. So, but the superego won't let me be in one, won't let me be in two. Like
And what's
if
it
I,
do for you? What's that experience like for you? What do you,
well,
is it,
the superego will attack me for being manipulative, or um because when four is going to two, they're fearing that their ways have alienated themselves from people so much that they start people pleasing, and then the superego comes and attacks you for being disingenuous, inauthentic, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I can see that. I haven't really thought about that, but having been married to a four,
Yeah.
I can see that, and I can see how this sensitivity of the four, okay, can fuel that manipulative part of two. It's
Mm.
like jet fuel. You're in high octane stuff because you
Yeah.
have a more sensitive insight into what needs to be manipulated.
It's not pretty, and but in my experience, it's also stressful, and I'm sure I hear that in lots of fours, even when they don't know they're fours. When I'm aware of their type, you can. It's not a happy place, that move to two, but so it's a really important prolonged work. Is working with the superego around the soul child, because and then when the soul child is, coming, and there's a lot of the life forces coming back, I think then the superego comes back again and again and again to as this structure is being what's the word, John, properly digested, because in the beginning it's in that infantile bratty condition.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you were pointing to something earlier. I think I actually mentioned that it was something very important you were pointing at, and that is this, that the superego is such an incredibly valuable resource for growth. If I don't react and fall into that whole thing, if I take it like there's there's a part of me that is in that structure that is still connected to the real. Okay? And if I start relating to the superego as it's the part of me that's yelling and giving me a wake up call. Pay attention to this. Pay attention
Mm-hmm.
to this. But I don't pay attention to it. I fall into the thing of, blah, 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 trying to get my way out of it. If I simply take the message, pay attention to this and go, hey, thanks a lot. Now, go to the movie. I'll get back to you later. Right. Okay. That becomes a very useful uh, engagement with the superego.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
shines the light on something. You say, okay, I see it. Take a hike. I'll
Mm-hmm.
take it from here.
Yeah, that is definitely true. I feel what I do these days, by the way, is I get the robot, I get Chat GPT to tell me how this looks for all the types, mostly because I'm not sure how it looks for all the types, and I think its list is pretty good, so I'm going to whiz through it quickly because we've only spoken about our types, which I think is fair enough. But so for ones, the superego operating around their soul child, which is 7.7. So for ones, that is possibly showing up as judging themselves for being spontaneous, uncontrolled, and desire driven. Feel free to interrupt me as
Oh, I thought you were just going to go through the list.
I will, but feel free to interrupt me. So for twos, it's judging themselves for being self-absorbed or making things about them, a la four. For threes, it's shaming themselves for feeling uncertain, doubting, or hesitant, as a six. For fours, we've spoken about, it's judging ourselves for judging and feeling really critical towards others. For fives, that's shaming themselves and others for being intense or big in some way, in like an eight. And for sixes, it's judging themselves for having calm and peace and trust and not being vigilant, so being relaxed, like a nine. For sevens, judging themselves for feeling withdrawn and wanting to isolate. For eights, with judging themselves and others for being needy and dependent. For nines, that's judging others for being ambitious, visible, and assertive. I see so many nines in my group, just really reacting to the more expressed people in the group. It's so funny, it's so predictable. Um, because of the inner free that they're not sort of allowing themselves.
So what comes up in you as you read that list? Well, forget that. Let me tell you what comes up in me as you read it.
Yeah, please.
It's a heartbreak.
Yeah, it is.
You are speaking to what a particular type longs for, like with type 1 moving to 7, right? Longing for spontaneity, you know. And the thing that came up for me when you first started on that was the connection of 7 to joy. And here you have a type 1, that is longing to return to the immediacy of their beingness, which is joyful. And you have all of this garbage in the way of that. You know, like with me, 8 to 2. Okay, there, my whole life I suffered from this inability of knowing how to connect with people. And people were important to me, friendships, but I had very poor experience in life as a child in developing friendships, deep, meaningful friendships. Well, I grew up in the military, so we were moving every couple
Mm.
of years, which didn't help it.
Difficult. Yeah.
But I could feel that, and that's what took me off the spiritual path, and eventually led me to the Diamond Approach, as I've said, is I was pretty clear that I didn't know how to be a human being. Everybody else seems to get it, but I don't know how. And there's this longing in me to want to have real connection with people. And
Mm.
everything I do keeps fucking it up,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah.
And that type of repetitive experience is something that just, I draw back into myself. It's like I don't even want to move there because
Mm.
it's so heartbreaking. It's so disappointing. And this thing getting in it and then judging myself around it all, it's unbearable. I don't want
Mm.
it in my consciousness. None of us do, right? We suppress all that stuff. Right? But if we're looking at it through a more adult lens, and a lens that is informed by, say, the Enneagram or the Diamond Approach or other spiritual wisdom, okay, we see that, oh, all of that distortion and occlusion is in the way of what we really want.
Mhm. Mhm.
And this is one of the ways that uh, conceptuality can serve us, you know, is that if I conceptually understand what's going on, that helps me to go, oh, okay, I can move into that mess some, because I know
Mm.
that's just a distortion. That's just a bunch of garbage that's in the way. And so I'll move in there because I feel this this deep longing, motivation, movement to get what's on the other side of that.
Mhm.
That's what I want to reclaim. That's what I want back in my life.
Yeah, that's it. That's the work. So getting separating from the superego and just being present with the initially young
Beneath
Initially
the mess.
young. Yeah, initially a young version of something very true and something very beautiful. What we were talking about last time, actually, each of these are qualities of essence. So the four's soul child has a lot of brilliancy, a lot of intelligence, and then the the type 8 soul child, a capacity for merging love, or a sweetness. Not even, it's not even about a capacity, is it, John? Has a sweetness to it.
There is the sweetness. I'm trying to
Yeah.
locate this picture of me.
Yeah.
Oh, I know where I can get it. Hang on, I'm going to show you a picture of my soul child. And then
Yeah.
you
Oh,
see this kid?
yeah.
Okay, this is me at about 4.5 to 5 years old.
When you showed me that, I didn't clock that it was you initially, but it actually, I can see it now.
Yeah. Well, he has a particular expression on his face here that is a little different from the actual picture that this was brought from, because
Oh,
the program animates him. So
oh,
his
I
or
see.
what have you, and his eye, the look in his eyes are different. But this kid is like a frumpy little kid. His
Oh,
view of the world, his internal self-image is not a pleasant thing.
hmm.
And I use him to do these shorts to talk about the book, The Enneagram World of the Child. This is the point I want to make.
Hmm.
To locate an image from your childhood that seems to represent and embody your soul child.
It's a good idea. Yeah.
This guy, okay, uh, he has not developed into this eight yet that is totally distancing himself
Mm.
from his state because he's still living the state, right? It's the adult that doesn't want to go back. This kid is living the immediacy of the heartbreak, of the deficiency, of the failure, whatever. So to find an image of ourselves, that kind of speaks to that, and carry it around, put it on the refrigerator, spend time with it. This helps us to nurture and develop more capacity to tolerate what this poor guy was dealing with.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
feeling his reality as I look at the picture, which doesn't take a lot of self-reflection to be able to feel the impact, to feel the contractions, but maybe it does.
Mm.
I don't know anymore.
Yeah. 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 That is an excellent idea for a practice. I'm glad that you mentioned that. Yeah. Yeah, well, this is good, John. This is really what I wanted to us to labour today. The importance of getting the superego away from the soul child structure. That was my aim for this conversation. I think we've done it. What do you think?
I think that writing this new book and really putting my attention on this again has once again made me realize that how critical this work on the superego is.
Mm,
You're not going to get anywhere on the path. Now, you may engage it in different ways and see it differently, but to engage this mechanism that is keeping us stuck, that keeps the energy of awareness and presence being sidetracked into the world of self image and misidentification. You have to work on that. That has to be addressed in somehow, some way.
mm,
And I can well imagine that I could be in a Buddhist monastery and just meditating. But if I am going to, if part of what is happening there is the metabolization of the sense of self and what have you, in that process of meditating and sitting and being with myself, I'm going to contact certain contractions and defenses that we would, I think, more easily access through the understanding and a model of the superego.
Mm.
This understanding makes it fairly simple. I mean, and that's the thing about the Enneagram and the Diamond Approach. In a way, it makes everything too simple.
I don't know about that, John. I mean, it makes things very clear, doesn't it? But that doesn't necessarily hasten the work. Although I think it does. I think the Diamond's approach is a really efficient path, and the Enneagram's a really efficient map. A lot of shortcuts can be had, and I like a shortcut. You know, why spend 10 years in therapy when one can avail themselves of the Enneagram?
Good luck in getting that, because it rarely happens that you're able to get that thing.
It's been driving me mad all day. Yeah, I'm gonna stop doing that
Well,
now.
see, that's just like the superego. That's how,
It is just like the
yeah,
superego.
that's how, it's tough to catch it and deal with it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep. Thank you for listening. We are on pause now, John and I, as we go on some travels, but we might be back next year talking about John's process Enneagram books or something else. Who knows?
Who knows? Hey,
Um,
yeah, I've enjoyed it.
yeah, me too.
Appreciate you reaching out and having some conversations.
Mm,
I hope there's a few people out there that actually tune in and it helps them
mm.
to some degree.
I think they will. I think they'll pick up over time, and I think we've put some good stuff out there. And I, for one, have a voice in my head now, John, your voice, saying it's the phenomenology, which is help. It's really, it's having an effect. I don't want you to think you've wasted your time here with me.
Well,
It's
don't
have
let your superego latch onto that.
no, right, yeah, yeah. No, it's had a real impact. I can feel the impact, and yeah, it's been very, very precious, very useful,
That's
val
actually one of the more sophisticated and shortcuts to working with the superego.
hmm
Feel the phenomenology of what it's doing to you. And
pretty
one way
terrible.
one way of working with it is, where's the voice coming from?
Mm,
Is it here? Is it here? Is it here? It's like locate that and then feel the dynamism of how that shapes you. Like if my
mm,
superego is here and it's judging me, is this what's happening
mm,
internally? Can I feel the shape? And I allow myself to be molded into that shape so I can actually get in touch with the phenomenology of what's going on and get out of the da 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 da, right? And as I move into the phenomenology, as you know, if our physical form, whatever shape our physical form is in, there's a corresponding energy and affect that goes with that.
mhm,
So that will help me identify the sense of what's going on in my heart or what's going on in my belly. How's this thing affecting me? What as it's doing its thing and it's using my life force against me is, you know, what's it feel like to be robbed of that vitality, to be
mm.
robbed of that sensitivity and that appreciation and gratitude in life.
Yeah.
Yeah, the phenomenology is a good way to work with it.
Mm.